what I really want to do, you've heard my big speech in May. So this is like really what I've done since May. And I think it helps us just get another perspective on what's going on in the world. I was really fortunate, maybe a little less fortunate than Andy. I've probably traveled half the world, but he's traveled the entire world. But what I think we both have seen is that everywhere we have gone, people are struggling to try to change their schools and try to bring them up to sort of 21st century. So I want to just give you a little piece of what I saw in China, what I saw in, in Beijing. I was in Beijing, I can't really say China, and what I saw in Finland very quickly, and then what's going on in the United States also quickly. Okay, I was invited to give a keynote speech at a conference in Beijing, and the conference was called Action Research, and I immediately said, action research? That was discovered at Teachers College where I was a professor 50 years ago. So I have to figure out how to say something beyond action research. So I titled my speech, From Action Research to Teacher Knowledge. But what I found was fascinating. The Chinese government has figured out that they've got the economy. They know how to sort of get people to work. They know how to make money. They know how to build new buildings. And now they're really struggling we got to change the schools. And one of the things that was clear as soon as you go there is the incredible reverence for authority and old age, which is why I am a sage in China. And it has done them well in the past. It is not doing them well in the present. And so this was an attempt on a very sort of radical professor to get a little bit of money and organize a group of people around Beijing to actually do research in their own classrooms. And I think there were 450 teachers there, all having done research in their own classrooms. And one of the things that, of course, we all noticed was how articulate they became about their practice, how, of course, they wanted to do more. So I met, like Andy and I, we don't just give speeches, we go and organize. And so I met with the group, and they said, so what are we going to do? Everybody now wants to do action research. And I said, okay, now you get a group of people, you teach these teachers how to lead other people, and you now expand the leadership. And in fact, that is really what they're doing. But China has an incredible problem. They not only have, teachers want to change, but they don't know how. And so this is like sort of the first cut of how to think about how to get into your own classroom and begin to think. Okay, so that's the sort of the Chinese version. I was also in Shanghai, like many others. In Shanghai, I found it even more interesting. I thought Shanghai was sophisticated, very Western, da-da-da-da. I was on a dais. I gave my speech, but then I was like a discussion leader, and then I lucked out and had the sort of last word in the conference. And I looked over on the dais, and there was me and 9 men. And I said, this is the sophisticated Shanghai? So without really thinking about this, I turned to them and I said, look, I hope when I come here next time, there'll be 5 men and 5 women. And the discussion will be about the people who are practicing and doing these kinds of things, and the people who make the policy will then say, okay, how can we enable these people to do this practice? And there was like a rumble in the audience. I think it's probably the best comment I've ever made in my life. Okay, so then I went to Finland. And you've heard a lot about Finland. Pasi Sahlberg has written a terrific book. He's actually written a chapter for a book that I've edited. But here's what I learned just as an American going to Finland. That is, you couldn't help, I went to several schools, and I also gave a little speech from sort of what we were doing in the United States and what I thought was missing in Finland. And one of the things I saw was that teaching is incredibly prestigious. And now I'm coming from the United States, where everybody hates teachers. So this was incredible. I mean, people, they voted, and people want to be a doctor first and a teacher second. I mean, that would be unheard of in the United States. And the other thing is that They've spent a huge amount of time in pre-service education. Every teacher has a master's degree. Everybody who wants to be a teacher doesn't get to be a teacher. They have a very interesting way of sort of interviewing people and seeing if they really like kids. Do they care about subjects? And you know that a lot of teachers who get to teaching turn out to not like kids. They're difficult. And so, but then I asked them, I said, do you really think that just because you have a master's degree and you learn about pedagogy and you learn about content and you learn about all kinds of, and you learn how to do research, that you would still be able to just go and teach and not have this horrendous first year? And they were nonplussed. And so I introduced, in a more formal way, the idea of mentoring, which we do have in the United States, which is really good, particularly in California, where we have a law that every new teacher has to be mentored for at least 2 years. Some of the mentoring isn't so wonderful, but at least there's another soul there that you can talk to. And the other thing I found was that lots of teachers continue to go on to get PhDs, but not to go out of teaching, as we do in the States, but in fact to stay in teaching so that you learn more, know more, work more with other people. The other thing I found incredible was that all the food is free from K-12. So I went to the cafeteria, I took out my wallet, and they said, "What are you doing? You know, this is free." I've been fond of writing in every article I've ever written that food is the great organizer. If it is, Finland is seriously organizing. The other thing is that I found that the teachers that I talked to were like my professor friends. They're autonomous, they're professional, they really want to know. They are still interested in sort of, I sat in on a seminar, of the last seminar, where the people are getting their master's degree. They've all done a piece of research. I can tell you from years and years of reading doctoral dissertations, many of these were better than the doctoral students that I have seen, because they were looking at the kinds of things that teachers experience in the classroom, the kinds of things that give you a bellyache, the kinds of things that you really don't understand. And there it was in their research. So I think the preparation is outstanding, because you learn as a teacher, rather than I think the way I learned, that it's okay to have questions, it's okay to fail, it's okay to screw up because that's part of what it means to become a teacher. So for me, what Finland is doing, so I, in my own inimitable way, arranged a collaboration between the Finnish teachers and the New Teacher Center, which is the best mentoring program in the United States. And 3 weeks ago, 15 teachers from Finland came to Santa Cruz to learn about mentoring. And this is the kind of research projects I love. We're going to look at Finnish teachers and how they mentor in the context that they live in, and 15 teachers in the United States and how they mentor in the context that they live in. That's the kind of research I think, Annie, that I think researchers can do, and I think some of us are fighting hard to get this as legitimate research. Okay, moving right along. This is a study that I've participated in. I've been friends with the mentor-teacher program for a long time. And one of the things that Ellen Moyer, who's the head of the mentoring program, has done is she sent a researcher to 2 of the places where teachers are being mentored. And for 4 years, she just interviewed the teachers, the mentors, to try to figure out about mentor knowledge. What is it that mentors learn when they try to ment new teachers? She then called me and said, "I want you to go see Susan Hansen. This is the way she works." And I said, "Who is she? You know, what do you want me to do?" She said, "You just go see her." So I go see Susan Hansen, and she tells me she's got this incredible data about how mentors learn to ment. And I said, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" She said, "I haven't got the slightest idea." And I said, well, I do. And what we did was the three of us read all this voluminous stuff about the kinds of things that mentors said as they worked with new teachers. And we came up with this big idea. I should say I came up with it because I feel like much of the way we learn leadership as teachers and as teacher leaders is by negotiating sort of the inevitable tensions that people feel in a school. And that's exactly, we found through these 4 years worth of interviews, 5 different sort of tensions that these mentors face. Maybe some of them are things that you faced early on in your projects, but the first was the mentors said over and over again, when I got picked to be a mentor, I knew what it was like to be a really good classroom teacher. I had a lot of stuff that I knew. I had been quite successful. Now I'm a mentor, and I have to go into 7 different schools, and I don't know who I am. The veteran teachers don't talk to me. Sometimes I get a principal who says, what are you doing here? Often I get a teacher who I am mentoring who says, oh, I'm doing fine, and the kids are throwing spitballs and, not sitting down and walking all over the place. And so the mentors struggle with an identity. Like, who am I? What am I doing here? How do I actually be successful? The second thing was clearly that they realized that they had to now not just be good in their own classroom. They had to get to know the veteran teachers. They had to get to know the special teachers. They had to figure out how to negotiate with the principal, good or bad, and everybody else who comes to the school. And that was part of their identity, is establishing these relationships so they could be seen as legitimate, not just in one school, but sometimes even in 10 different schools, which led them to sort of their central tension, which is that somehow to accelerate teachers' learning as a new teacher, the biggest tension is what comes first, building a trusting relationship with a teacher or helping them with their pedagogy. And what they found was that you can't answer that question. There's no sort of right or wrong answer. Sometimes you come and you realize you're not going to get anywhere unless you make some kind of connection. But other times you come and you see such chaos, you realize, I'll make a connection, but first I got to help this person with some kind of classroom management. So in the process of negotiating these two things, which are always in tension, they learn about leadership. They learn what works in different situations. They become bolder in how they work. And it's the very tension that helps create the people's sense of who they are. And of course, you might imagine that many of them are mentoring in really tough places. Sometimes in one situation, the school is totally dysfunctional. The principal is barely breathing, as are the teachers. And in comes a brand new teacher who's just learning how to teach. And she sees all this chaos going on around her, a principal who's not supportive, and somehow the mentor has to figure out how to get this person into the profession. So this is what mentoring is about, and of course we realized that all of these things are teaching these mentors how to sort of negotiate the system, the individuals, the people who make up the culture, so that they can become serious leaders. And it turned out to be something that I think we learn as teachers, the same kind of stuff that we learn as teachers. It's not about one thing, it's about negotiating the many things that you learn over and over again. Sometimes you can't even label them. But one of the things I want to end with, I think my time is almost up, is I went back to the slide from May, and I said, okay, so let me look at TLLP and see what they're doing. And I realized that I want you to know what you are a part of. This may be one of, maybe not the only, but one of the most radical things that's going on in the world, not just in Canada. First of all, the trust and cooperation between, in this case, the ministry and the unions. I'm sure you've read the paper about what's going on in the United States. You know, there are bad teachers, bad unions, bad everything. The only thing that's good is charter schools and people who come into teaching from someplace else and get 5 minutes of learning how to teach during the summer. That's kind of like the mood in the U.S. So this in itself is a sort of a big idea. The other thing is that several of us have been talking about teachers teaching teachers for years. The people say, well, teachers teaching teachers, so what's that about? Teachers are just, you know, spreading their ignorance. People don't understand that teachers teaching teachers does not mean you just get these ideas from your belly button. It's also that you look at other people, you look at other ideas, you try to figure out how these ideas might work in your context. So, of course, we've got to talk to people about how this happens. What's it look like? What's it look like as you develop the ideas? Growing teacher leaderships, as you know, is what happens is when you start doing something like this, you learn that you can be with other adults. And, you know, they might even have some good ideas. And it's not just about getting rewards from kids. It's also getting rewards from grown-ups who learn how to work differently in the context. So many of the things I saw were about working with other people, spreading ideas, learning, you know, more deeply what it is you're trying to do. Building community, of course, is here. You are now participants in an incredible, it's not an experiment anymore. It's an idea whose time has come, probably a long time ago, but now it's actually working, and we need to figure out how to talk about it and tell about it in all its detail. Clearly, many of you have had, I told somebody about the success room. I don't know whether I think this was like a while ago, where a teacher doesn't get along with a kid, and the kid obviously doesn't get along with the teacher, and one of the teachers created a success room. You work with the teacher and the kid long enough so that they can actually come to understand each other. I feel this most deeply because my last grandchild who's in school says, teachers don't really care about me. And I remind him, you know, that they have 120 kids a day, and it's hard to sort of look at everybody. It doesn't satisfy him. He still feels, you know, that teachers don't really care. So let me just say that the last thing that Andy and I have worked on for a long time is how you sort of connect what it is teachers do and come to learn as hopefully a way of getting at teachers' knowledge and putting that knowledge along with what researchers do. They ask sometimes good questions, but they ask different questions. And what I'm hoping is that we will eventually get a book out of some of your projects where you do the writing and you do the explaining and you do what it is that helped us develop these projects, and hopefully connect it to what you now have, which is enabling policy. This is still the major question that Annie started with and that many of us have been working on for our whole careers. People keep asking me, when am I going to retire? I'm not going to retire until we win. Thank you.